describe Libby is a very large undertaking.
You know, when people get older, they tend to actually become more centered on themselves. That's not for her. Her world seems to become wider and more open.
My name is Libby Mills. I was born in Belfast, Maine, 89 years ago. We moved to Putney in 1958. It's an old farmhouse with 60 acres of woods and gardens and pastures. I was 14 when I met Bob. He was the canoeing counselor, and I was one of the campers. We stayed in touch over the years, and I married him when we were in our early 20s. He was my ticket to adventure, and we certainly played that card very, very hard.
Libby and Bob hiked and camped out and went on expeditions of various kinds in the out of doors.
I just love being out. I love being shed of all the trappings of indoor living, and I like the simplicity of it. I'm looking for moose tracks, and we saw them a couple of weeks ago.
I think she is at heart very young. How she just moves around, how she splits the wood, how we take hikes along the coast and she hops from rock to rock, and kind of see this as the best role model for growing old, so gracefully and so fitfully too.
There we are. It's Green Mountain Orchard apples, Green Mountain Orchard blueberries, and homegrown rhubarb. Looks edible. Abandon this and go to a tiny, primitive cabin on the coast of Maine, on Swan's Island, where we have no electricity and no running water.
She just loves that, you know, to really live the simple life and just being right there on the ocean. That's really, yeah, so important to her.
Maintaining that block for forest connectivity and wildlife corridor. Working with the Pinnacle Association, trying to conserve the long ridgeline to the west of our town. So satisfying. 20 miles from the northern peak to the very, very bottom. Teaching at Putney for the 30 years I was there was an education in itself. Many of those students I have stayed in touch with over the years.
The first memory I have of Putney is walking into this room and taking weaving as an evening activity. Libby basically opened up this huge, wonderful world.
Like them, fabrics have become an important part of my life. The weaving and the threads they speak of continuity, and that's what life is all about. And we were 3 of the 4 co-founders of the Green Mountain Spinnery.
Back in the late 70s, we had sheep in Vermont, but we didn't really have yarn that came from them. So we wanted to see if we could do something with the sheep that were our neighbors. Libby had sheep, so she was an advocate. Part of the founding of the spinnery was figured out in jail with Libby and Claire demonstrating against Seabrook.
Libby and I went to jail together. And that time, the idea of starting a spinning mill had entered my head. So we had some time in the jail, in the lockup, to think more about that.
When she's with you, she is so very present. I remember Libby could sometimes be a little bit late, a little bit tardy for appointments, but I always knew that the reason was because she was so fully there with whoever she was with.
In essence, she is just a very, very generous and very understanding person, interested in other people, selfless in a lot of ways.
She's one of the warmest, toughest, kindest people I've ever met, with a huge amount of faith in people.
Annie turned diabetic when she was 7. Matt was in a serious sledding accident when he was 9. Annie was in her late 20s, 3-year battle with cancer, she died when she was 32. Losing a child is probably the hardest death, that it's the loss of a future. 8 years after that Bob died. It must have been late February, early March, and we walked up to the beaver pond, and there were the redwings singing, and recognized that with the help of so many people, I had gotten through the first winter without Bob. Gib was an artist and a musician. We lived together for 10 years. He died of a heart attack. I see Gib's work on the walls, sitting in the chairs, tables, woodcuts. So much of his work is here in this house. So John came along, and John was just steady, and he gave me the sense that everything would be okay.
John, of course, came from New Haven and was a corporate lawyer, and so that was very different, but she was not necessarily willing to give up her life and her commitment to the land.
And we had a wonderful 10 years, and he just died last summer. I mean, it's interesting that I suppose I should be grieving at all 3 of those losses, and I guess I do in a way, but on the other hand, I feel as though I've been so lucky to have 3 wonderful relationships with 3 wonderful guys.
We were canoeing together out on Swan's Island, and I said, God, Libby, the one thing that is just so amazing about you is that with all the tragedies that you have, experienced, that you are not bitter.
With all these losses that Libby has had, she has remained so extraordinarily positive.
Well, I think of Maya Angelou saying, and still I rise. And Libby, she rises. She rises above it.
I want to be like Libby. and I want to age like Libby, and I want to continue to be as alive as Libby is at such a formidable age, but she's gonna keep going. She's gonna keep being so alive, I know, for many years to come.
That limited time that we have on this planet, every day counts. You really want to do what your heart tells you have to do when you have to do it.